Good afternoon. I'm John Bitzan, the Menard Family Director of the Sheila and Robert Challey Institute for Global Innovation and Growth. Welcome to Dakota Digital Discussions. This is a collaborative effort between the Challey Institute and Dakota Digital Academy. I'm excited today that we're going to be joined by Steve Malme, an alum from NDSU, who's going to be talking about digital transformation and what it means for the future of technology, the future of business, and the future of your career. The mission of the Challey Institute is to advance understanding in the areas of innovation, trade, institutions, and human potential in order to identify policies and solutions for the betterment of society. We're looking for bottom-up solutions and ways to unleash the private sector to address important problems for society and to increase societal flourishing. And I think that our mission aligns very well with Dakota Digital Academy's goal of trying to educate all North Dakota citizens and help them to adjust to the opportunities and challenges associated with increasing digitization of our economy and society. So I'm really grateful to Dakota Digital Academy for collaborating with the Challey Institute on this, for Patrick McCloskey, who's part of Dakota Digital Academy, and for Ken Nygard. And so I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ken.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I am Ken Nygard. I am the director of the Dakota Digital Academy. I am also Emeritus Professor of Computer Science at NDSU, where I was a professor for a long, long time. Our special guest today, Steve Malme. I go back a long ways with Steve. He graduated from our bachelor's program in computer science here at NDSU. And over the years, there have been times when, by chance, Steve and I have run into each other at airports when we were doing a lot of traveling. And I remember one time we almost missed our flight because we got started talking about things. I think that was back when Steve was in Singapore working for Microsoft. And so we do go back. We've seen a lot of changes in computer science in our time. I have, and certainly Steve has too. You know, everything from way back when we had mainframe computers and mini computers and desktop computers and finally the smartphones of today. And so there's been a lot of change. And one of the things as technology people that we love to do is keep up with those changes. And that's the lifelong learning thing. And we're going to be talking about that quite a bit today. Yep. And so that's a big thing, a big thing. Now about the Dakota Digital Academy. The Dakota Digital Academy is really the brainchild of our chancellor, Mark Hagerott, who had the vision that there should be an organization that knits together all 11 campuses in the university system in North Dakota in directly collaborative ways. And so that's what we do. I work on programs that can be administered and facilitated and offered cooperatively among all 11 campuses. So it's a powerful vision. And we've more recently connected in the 5 tribal colleges as well. So there's quite a few moving parts with the work of the Dakota Digital Academy. So then, turning to our guest, Steve Malme, I'd like to read the bio that I do have for Steve. Steve Malme is a graduate of North Dakota State University. He's held many positions in software, engineering, business development, executive leadership with major companies like IBM, Microsoft, Amazon in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia. He's worked in developing strategic partnerships, business management, health and wellness systems, cloud computing, immersive technologies, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, data analytics, enterprise software, and electronic health records. And Steve is also an innovator in the development of philanthropic initiatives to support impoverished and neglected children. So with that, I would like to turn to Steve. The first, we'll do this in a dialogue style, basically a discussion style. The first question I want to pose for our special guest is the following. Steve, as your bio indicates, you've had and continue to have a very interesting career. Can you talk a bit more about your upbringing, your experience at NDSU, and the role they've played in your career and in success? Steve.
I can. Hi, John. First of all, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you great.
Okay, fantastic. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to participate in the discussion. It's an honor to spend time with both of you, and Ken, just to be able to share a friendship and appreciation for that friendship and your intellect throughout the years. Definitely owe a debt of gratitude for that. So my background, I do come from North Dakota, Minnesota. So there's a small town about 60 miles north of Fargo-Moorhead called Chale, Minnesota. That's kind of a sneeze in the road, but beautiful place. My father still lives there, and I have older children in Fargo-Moorhead, and also have grandchildren in the area, and also have a new second family in Bangkok, Thailand. And so I get the best of both in terms of being able to share time with family. I went to NDSU, as you highlighted, Ken, and owe a debt of gratitude for the education that I was able to receive there. Went straight from NDSU to IBM in the development labs of IBM back in the day, and went there with a bunch of college graduates from MIT and Harvard and Yale, Penn State. And I'll tell you that the education that I received at NDSU allowed me to compete with all of those different folks because of the practical hands-on experience that was provided me through the university system. And so for those of you that work in the university system, thank you. For those of you that are attending it, be grateful for what you have, because it's a great asset of the state of North Dakota. So sincere thanks. As you highlighted, I've been able to take that learning and apply it across many different companies, very large companies like IBM, Microsoft for 15 years across the world, as well as assignments across Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. And then recently just joined Amazon. And so I've been part of AWS Worldwide Health. That's what I currently do full time. And then I also have a couple of directorships for both a local company in Fargo-Moorhead named FBS, as well as a company that's based out of the East Coast called Immersive Fusion. And so I've been able to take that learning and certainly apply it in many different ways, and appreciate the chance to connect with both of you gentlemen today.
Well, yeah, Steve, first of all, I just wanted to say thanks for doing this today. We really appreciate this. Not only are we going to learn a lot from you, but I think it's very inspirational to the students to see, what's possible for them in the future. So thanks again for doing this. First question I want to ask you is the term digital transformation. I think a lot of people, or some people, me included maybe, are not really familiar with exactly what that means. So could you define the term digital transformation, and then just tell us, what does it mean for the future of technology? What does it mean for the future of business? What does it mean for the future of my career or anybody's career?
Sure, I can take a shot, and then hopefully we'll try to clarify it. And if not, we'll just have a confusing discussion. But as part of the clarification, one of the things that Ken had touched on is the topic of lifelong learning. And when asked to participate in this discussion and what was my area of expertise, my honest answer is I don't feel like I'm an expert at anything, because the more I learn about something, the more ill-informed I feel. And so there's always so much more to explore and understand. And so I feel like digital transformation and lifelong learning really are intersected in terms of how they weave together. And the fact is that when you start out on a digital transformation or lifelong learning journey, you're really never sure where you're going to end up, because as soon as you get to that destination, there's always another horizon that you can follow. And so when I look at digital transformation, I look at the intersection of many different things to be able to actually realize the kind of results that typically a business wants to achieve. So in a business sense, digital transformation is the intersection of technology, along with sciences, business processes, people, change, and culture. And when you weave those things together, you can do some amazing things. But those are like, that's all very esoteric in terms of how I talk about it. And so I think it's helpful to maybe provide some crystal clear examples just in the form of companies and products that truly represent transformation and being able to bring those different aspects together. So as an examples of that, one of the things that I've really enjoyed through my career has been developing electronic health records. And I'm not a doctor, but I play one at work sometimes. And by doing that, I basically, along with many different team members who super smart people, we're able to bring together the best of medicine. So typically, best practice medicine is typically defined by a clinical or medical advisory board. So a group of illustrious physicians and clinicians who come together and define a best practice standard of care. And that's true in all the different practices, whether it's radiology or oncology, cardiology. And so you have best practices. When you take those best practices and then interweave that with electronic health records, and then you also apply practices from artificial intelligence like expert systems, then you're able to bring together solutions like we did about 20 years ago at a company called Optics, which was now sold to Varian. And so for those of you that are following along on our discussion, you can actually go to the web, and I'll do this throughout the discussion, so keep your cell phones handy. So if you go to Google and search for Varian, V-A-R-I-A-N, and varian.com is where you'll end up. And what you'll see there, if you search for products and software, is the product that we developed about 20 years ago. And it was actually an expert system-based medical oncology solution. And it would allow the physician to interact with the patient in real time and utilize that expert system to guide them through the process of actually prescribing medical oncology treatments. And it would vary the dosage, it would vary the type of treatment that was available to that patient based upon the specific patient condition, clinical diagnostic condition of that patient. And so it allowed oncology to advance a step further in terms of that exact science and the availability of all those best practices at the point of care. When I talk about digital transformation, we come to the next wave of transformation, which is happening right now. And I had an opportunity to work for about a year or so with a company called vCure, V-I-E-C-U-R-E, vCure.com. And if you go to vCure, what you'll see is the next digital transformation in that same practice of medicine. So in oncology, vCure is an AI-enabled genomic oncology platform. And so what we developed was a platform that allowed you to actually take the genomic profile of an individual. So Ken, we'd be able to take your genomic profile. We'd be able to look at the variants in your genetic test. And those variants and the variations within your genetics will actually identify specific treatment plans that would be applicable for any kind of cancer that you may have. And so as an example, if I would have small cell lung cancer, and if my gene variant was the ALK4 gene at position 14,000, the physician would be told by the computer, please prescribe trametinib, because that's the exact drug for that exact variant for that exact type of cancer. And the only way you can really practice oncology with that kind of precision is by utilizing digitally enabled technology. There's just simply too many practices, too many drugs, and far too many variants in the human genome to be able to practice any other way. So some really great examples of how through the decades, first with expert systems and best practice medicine, and then again, just within the last couple of years with genomic medicine, the ability to digitally transform oncology and the use of EHRs within that patient and provider interaction.
Awesome, thank you.
Wow, fascinating. So that tie-in with genetics and DNA sequencing, I can't resist mentioning that I've had my own DNA sequenced and found that I have lots of relatives back in all over the place, including the Scandinavian countries, that I didn't even know that I had. And that'll tie in with something I happen to know about Steve, that with his ancestry, there's a village in Norway called Malme, and a fjord called Malme Fjorden. And if you just go into Wikipedia and type in Malme, you'll see this fantastic image of the Malme Fjord and the Malme village, which would be Steve's family heritage back in Norway. How cool is that? And
It is cool, and I'm not sure why they left. Like, I would have stayed if I was in their shoes. It's a beautiful place.
I saw the picture and I think you should use that as your background next time.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. And I certainly agree that in the genetic world, there is so much futuristic potential for customized, personalized therapies, all of this stuff. It's an amazing thing, which actually is along the lines of the next question that I do have. So as a computer scientist myself, I'm always thinking about the next thing, the emerging technologies, and doing research into these different areas. So this would be things like machine learning, the immersive interfaces, augmented reality, blockchains, smart contracts, intelligent automation, things like that. And Steve, you've spent a lifetime translating emerging technologies into opportunities, business opportunities, and innovation opportunities that come along. So if you take a look ahead at some of the emerging technologies that are out there right now, do you have some things you would talk about in terms of opportunities that going forward?
I certainly do. One of the areas that I think may be of interest to the audience would be a little bit of a discussion around solutions that work and interoperate in the metaverse. And so the metaverse and Meta as a company and Meta everything is a bit more of a new frontier in terms of computer science and user experience. And it's really not fully defined what that experience can bring in terms of value to the end user. And so one of the things, one of the ventures that I'm associated with as a director and help guide the company is a company called Immersive Fusion. And if you, again, go to the web, it's all one word, immersivefusion.com. You can also go to YouTube and just type Immersive Fusion and search for it. And you'll find a number of YouTube videos for the company. But what you'll find in Immersive Fusion is the integration of a metaverse APM solution. It's called Immersive Apm. So APM is Application Performance Management. And what Application Performance Management allows you to do is actually assess the operation in real time of any application that you're running and understand the status of that application and where there might be errors or delays, bottlenecks in the solution, miscommunications. And the reason that that's so important is that especially in the new age of software design, current new software that's designed for cloud is message-based, microservice-oriented, completely parallel, and in many times serverless. And so you have this completely abstract and modularized architecture that runs in a highly parallel environment. And the ability to visualize that on a flat screen is nearly impossible, because basically you end up going through list upon list of all the activities that a system is generating and trying to pick out needles in the haystack of errors or bottlenecks or miscommunications. So what you'll see in Immersive Fusion and the Immersive APM is actually a three-dimensional environment where you literally, for the first time ever, can walk around your application. You can actually experience and inspect the application as it's running. And so each of the different processes that are running across your application, and usually in many enterprise applications, there are thousands of applications and tasks running simultaneously. You can see all of those call stacks in real time. They're in 3 dimensions, just like they would be laid out on a video game board. And so what we've done is we've taken open standards like open telemetry, and that's exactly what Fusion Immersive Apm is. It's a complete adaptation of the open telemetry specification. And then we've adopted that into a set of technologies using technologies like RabbitMQ for messaging, using technology like Unity for 3D rendering and the 3D experience that we provide. And then also taking advantage of newer technologies like Oculus so that I can literally strap on a headset and walk around my application and point at different tasks and be able to inspect the real-time operation of my software. And so the reason I focus on Immersive Apm is that it's the first time, especially as a software developer, that rather than looking at a flat plane of glass or looking at a list of calls and interactions of my software, I can actually inspect, experience, and understand the architecture of what I've designed and developed. And that gives me a lot of power and a lot more productivity.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. Wow. So that's fascinating. And if Mark Zuckerberg has tuned in by now, he would be doing handsprings. So this fantastic. Okay. I guess I continue.
Next question.
Yeah, the next question here. So Steve, you attribute a lot of your success to lifelong learning and emerging technologies. So based on the wide variety of experiences and skills that you've obtained, it's clear that you're constantly learning. Could you tell us a little about your position at AWS WW Health and the new learning and insights that provides?
Absolutely. And so for those that aren't familiar with AWS and how we're organized, so I'm part of our worldwide health team. That's WW Health. So the worldwide health team, we're focused on defining and documenting our strategies in terms of healthcare, and then also determining the different partners and solutions that we're going to work with to be able to serve healthcare providers, life sciences companies across the globe. And so if you're a physician network in the US, or if you're a hospital or a healthcare trust in the UK, or in Germany or Singapore, those are the customers that we serve. And so to serve them effectively, we're constantly looking to make sure that the very best healthcare solutions and technologies run on top of the AWS cloud, and that we also provide the tools and capabilities that are necessary for those companies to be able to deliver their services for their customers. So a couple of examples in terms of those types of partnerships and healthcare solutions. One, I'll go straight back to genomics, the topic that we were just on, and highlight one of the really unique both customers and partners that we work with, and that's a company called Grail. And so Grail was just reacquired. They were spun out of a company called Illumina about 3 to 5 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. And then Illumina just reacquired them within the last year or so. And Grail has a unique test called Gallery. And so if you go out, just go to grail.com, you'll find this. And so Gallery is a genomic diagnostics test. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to take a simple blood draw. And so literally just prick your finger and take a small blood draw, send it off to a lab, and you're able to identify just with that blood draw up to 50 different types of cancers in the very early stages of cancer development, so that you can be treated effectively and that you can actually eliminate the cancer before it progresses to a later stage. And so the relative cost of that test, as well as the quality of life for the individual taking the test, far exceeds the cost, as well as certainly the pain and discomfort of going through normal oncology treatment, whether it would be radiation, medical oncology, or surgical. And so that simple test is just now being rolled out. And so in addition to the compute power that we provide on the AWS cloud to be able to actually sequence and define and identify those variants within that particular test, we're also able to now be able to scale that out across the globe. And that's exactly the kind of partnership that we have with the Grail team to figure out how to best scale that to all kinds of citizens as well as businesses across the globe. A second area that I'd highlight is really in the AI and machine learning area. And this is for those of you that are interested and have piqued interest within AI and machine learning. AWS has a platform called Sagemaker. And Sagemaker allows you to easily create machine learning models. Now, what we find in healthcare is that you can apply a machine learning model to a particular population, but you have to retrain and reassess that model in terms of its accuracy, depending on the population you're serving. A great example is a diabetic prediction algorithm. So it would be typically used for patients who are early stages of diabetes, and what is their relative prediction and what is their treatment to ensure they offset the longer term effects of diabetes. That population that is utilized to actually, for that model to serve a population, it can effectively serve a population maybe in the northeastern part of the US, but it's going to be completely different if you take that same model to Thailand, because it's a different diet, different genetic profile, different culture. And so because of that, you have to be very careful about how you apply models. And so Sagemaker allows you to manage that whole pipeline. And the new frontier of learning that we're really embarking on right now is the full life cycle of machine learning model management. And so how do you actually identify that point in time when the model is deemed ineffective in terms of predicting results? And then how do you retest and validate the model to make sure that it can once again be used for that population? And so all of that, that's new frontier in the ML model management lifecycle, but really exciting for us.
Wow.
So I've talked about a couple of examples from my past, but I know that you gentlemen are constantly learning and constantly out on new frontiers as well. So I'd love to hear from from both of you, different areas of learning within the past year or so that you've done and the experience that you've had.
Sure, I can go if you want first, and then so
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so yeah. So first of all, I just want to say that is super cool work that you're doing. Man, you're making a big difference. I think that's really awesome, the stuff you're doing. But yeah, some of the ways that I learn, I think it's really fun being the director of an institute that I'm director of, because I work with smart faculty, creative faculty all the time. And I'm an economist, but I learn about public health. I learn about cybersecurity. I'm learning about all the stuff that you're doing and related to the metaverse and machine learning, all this stuff today. I learn about political science, learn about psychology and things that I normally, probably wouldn't. It'd be much more difficult for me to learn if I didn't hang around with these people, smart people and creative people. Also, I'll just give you just one recent experience is that the Challey Institute sponsors reading groups for students. And from time to time, I participate in those reading groups. And so as a participant, it's really a student reading group that they do the discussion. But as a participant, I still do the background reading and observe the discussion. And so we did one on Frederick Douglass recently. And so I learned a lot about, just the great thinker that Frederick Douglass was and all of his thoughts. And it was really a great experience. So those are just some of mine. Ken.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's great. And we had a chance to tour the Frederick Douglass House in Washington, D.C. up on the rise just recently. I would recommend that. So
yeah,
that would be
cool.
great fun.
Yeah.
So I'll just give a couple of examples. We did mention earlier that Patrick McCloskey is here today. He is the editor of Dakota Digital Review. I'll just hold up the current issue here. This is the periodical of the Dakota Digital Academy. And I actually have an article in here about entitled "Are Self-Driving Cars Safe?" And so some work I did with one of my PhD students, and so that's in there. And also convinced my son, who's a professor in Wisconsin, to write an article about the Mayan culture and Mayan calendars and all of the digital and technical stuff associated with all of that. So anyway, there's 2 Nygards published in the current issue of the Dakota Digital Review. I'll just very briefly mention a couple of others. I'm very interested now in cybersecurity, and we're doing programs in cybersecurity through the Dakota Digital Academy, as well as in software engineering. But in cybersecurity, some of my recent research work has to do with new techniques in machine learning that can process incoming streams of data to computer systems and classify those streams of data as to whether those are inimical intrusions of some kind coming into the system that can bring it down, and furthermore help to devise countermeasures that can be used to defend against those things. So that's a very recent kind of thing that I've just recently done. And this whole area of trust, I think, is a fascinating thing. We need trust in our computer systems. In the world of cryptocurrencies, I've done some recent work that evaluates the concept of trust as it applies to cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and so on. There's this idea out there that cryptocurrencies are ultra safe, ultra secure, ultra trustworthy. Well, it turns out that there are some ways in which that's not 100% true. And so there's some work in that area too that has to do with trusted computing and trusted computer systems. I love talking about this stuff, but we need to go on with Steve. Thank you for asking us about some of the things we've been doing.
No, it's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
And I love the 2 Nygards published. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So a big focus of the Challey Institute, Steve, is to look at, we want to try to figure out or try to understand how business can play a positive role in society and how business can come up with creative solutions to societal problems. And I think you've given us a bunch of really great examples. Just wonder if you could talk about that a little bit more. I mean, obviously, the idea of testing people's blood and be able to tell them, detect cancer early on. I mean, you're solving huge problems for society. And I just think that's a really good message for students to understand that you can go into business and make a profit and really do a lot of good for society. And I think, your career is a great example. So if you just would be willing to give a few more examples of some of the things you've worked on, that'd be spectacular.
Well, so the opportunity to actually drive a digital transformation. So we've talked a lot about the technology side of this. One of the things that I'd also encourage the students especially, or the audience in general, to pursue is actually learning well beyond technology. And one of the things that really influenced me heavily when I was based in Europe, I had an opportunity to attend some training at St. Gallen University in Switzerland. And so there's a gentleman there, Dr. Oliver Gossman, and he leads, it's actually a spin-off from the university. It's called BMI Labs, Business Model Innovation Labs. And so you can actually go to the web, and it is bmilabs.com. But the reason I highlight that particular institute and the work that they've done is what they've basically done is they've looked across the world, conducted the research. And if you're going to perform a digital transformation in a company, what you want to achieve is a certain business outcome. And that's typically a combination of both the use of technology as well as the integration of a business model or multiple business model and the changes that are required within that company. If you look across the entire globe, across all industries, how many business models are there? And what business model should I be using? Well, through extensive research and simplification, Oliver and his team actually came up with the answer, and the answer is 55. There's 55 business models in the world. And if you combine them in different pieces and parts, then you can actually basically arrive at any business model that's currently known on the planet. Now, I'm sure that there'll be new business models as we go forward. There's always new innovation where you have companies like Uber, where you have a sharing business economy that pop up and really revolutionize a complete industry. But that combination of business process change as well as technology change is something that I found really valuable, especially later in my career, influencing the executive level decisions and business model adaptations that need to be made. And so that's one area of development that I'd highlight. In terms of contributing to society and aligning with the mission of the Challey Institute, there's been a couple of opportunities that I've had in my career. So early on in my career, being from North Dakota and Minnesota, you can imagine that I'm a Lutheran as well. And so I know, I've had many hot dishes and many church dinners. And my uncle and my brother were both pastors. And so early in my career, I actually decided that I wanted to try to give back to the church and make software available that was a little bit cheaper than what was available in the market and was far better in terms of usability. And so myself and a partner based in Fargo-Moorhead, we founded a company called Icon Systems. And if you go to revelations.com, just like the book in the Bible, revelations.com, you'll actually land on that webpage. And so that again is about 20 years old, but now it's a completely cloud-based system. It has about over 4,000 different churches running on the Revelations platform. And there, last time I checked, 5 people supporting that company. And the reason that you can run 4,000 customers with 5 to 7 people, it's kind of varied in terms of size, but the reason you can run that volume of customers is simply because the software works so well and it's designed to meet the user needs so well that it doesn't require explanation or documentation. And so that kind of ability to provide something that's highly usable, highly affordable, and being able to give back to the church is something that was super valuable in my life. When I look at some of the things that AWS is doing and Amazon is doing right now, I see that same kind of giving mentality reflected. And so a couple of examples on that. One is we just announced within the last year a health equity initiative for AWS. And health equity is basically an initiative to ensure that regardless of race or geopolitical or financial basis, that everybody has equal access to healthcare. And so we're contributing $40 million to different organizations to ensure that we can create health equity across the entire, both US and the world. In addition to that, the other thing that we see very commonly, this is true in healthcare, it's true across many industries, is the fact that there's a huge gap right now in the industry in terms of capability to operate and manage and develop software in the cloud. And so that's just a significant gap that everybody is facing. It's super hard to find qualified, trained, and experienced people to be able to do that kind of work. And so as a result of that, we're making an investment, and we've got a goal set to train 29 million people by 2025 to be able to fill that gap. And that's how big the gap is. It's a huge gap in terms of the needs of industry and business. It's also a huge opportunity for people across the globe to be able to develop themselves and be able to serve their employers in the years ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. Those are great examples, and you're certainly doing a lot of good. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to get back to something mentioned earlier about patterns and platforms. And you had mentioned digital transformations and the terms patterns and platforms as a first concept. Can you get into that a little more, provide us with some insight regarding patterns and platforms?
I'd be happy to talk about both patterns and platforms. And I guess when I think about that concept and how it relates to digital transformation, again, just trying to give you some examples of what I would mean by platforms. Everybody is familiar with the large platforms, like Apple is a platform with Apple iPhone and the ecosystem that's around it. Same thing is true of AWS and the cloud platform that is provided. Microsoft is certainly a platform company, but it's more intriguing for me to think of some of the smaller companies and some of the unique capabilities that they provide. And so I'll use, first of all, a great Fargo-Moorhead example. So there's a company within Fargo-Moorhead called FBS. Mike Werzer is the CEO of FBS, has been for many years. And FBS is the second largest real estate multiple listing service software in the country. Serves over 250,000 real estate agents, and their customers vary in size from the city of Fargo-Moorhead all the way up to the state of Arizona. And so it serves a huge cross-section of the real estate market within the US. As I said, the second largest company of its kind in that particular market. And one of the ways that they've been successful is actually building the FBS real estate solution as a platform. So they can actually hook multiple types of software and partner solutions into the platform. They can easily port data in and out of that platform. And as a result, they can provide a much more compelling experience to both the real estate agent as well as a potential home buyer in any one of the markets that they serve. So if you go to the web, you would go to the website We Are FBS, just like it sounds, We Are FBS. FBS is Financial Business Systems. And so wearefbs.com. And that'll give you a good overview of FBS and their capabilities as a platform company. The other example I would use is actually going straight back to healthcare, a company that a friend of mine launched, a personal health company called Sensoria. So on the web, it's sensoriafitness.com. And Sensoria Fitness has a small device that they developed it's about a decade ago now. And it's about the size of your thumb. And that little device will plug into a shirt, a sock, any kind of intelligent fabric. And so that could be a sock, a shirt. It could be a boot for somebody who has a diabetic problem with their foot care. It could be somebody in a wheelchair and they want to sense the positioning of a person within the wheelchair so that they don't get pressure ulcers. And so that little chip via Bluetooth communication is able to constantly update information regarding the run that I might be on. Would be also monitoring my heart and any kind of cardiac condition that I may have while I'm working out. Could also be used to monitor my diabetic foot pressure and foot ulcers. And so that small little chip was able to transform medical care for those that are wheelchair bound, for those diabetics, as well as for just your average everyday athlete as we go out and complete a run or complete a workout. And so some really interesting ways to be able to transform via different types of technologies and platforms.
If there's anybody going into this presentation with doubts about the future of technology and solving problems, I mean, those doubts are being erased, I think. I mean, this is incredible, the stuff that you're telling us.
There's just so much opportunity. It's just
it's awesome. You have a great creative brain thinking about these things. So one of the things that you highlighted in your outline to us, prior to your talk today, was you said that it's really important to consider value propositions and value chains. So could you talk a little bit about the importance of value propositions and value chains?
Sure. I'll use another healthcare example to highlight some of the capabilities that exist there. And so one of the one of the partners that we work with, one of the companies that we work with is a company called Epic. Epic is the leading provider of electronic health records. That's true across the Americas and worldwide. And so they're about 29% of the market share in the North America market. They have over 250,000 patient records in their EHR. So you likely, either you personally or somebody in your family likely has a record within Epic somewhere in the US. And the reason I call out Epic as a great business model and a value chain is that Epic also has designed themselves as a platform. So there's many different APIs and capabilities to integrate with Epic. And so Epic actually hosts a site called App Orchard. And there's many different applications within their orchard that you can pick and then plug into Epic to be able to complement their software. In addition, in terms of value chains, whenever a customer is using that EHR, there's also typically literally hundreds or thousands of applications that integrate into that EHR experience to help inform and also guide the physician or clinician in terms of their patient interaction. And so those could be systems like laboratory systems, pharmacy systems, nurse call systems, scheduling systems. And so all of those different systems with the health systems that we interact with, those all interact with Epic and are tightly integrated to give you as a patient a seamless experience. And so that value chain, with just one solution at the center, the electronic health record, enables hundreds or thousands of applications to interact and interoperate to inform your physician and their supporting staff to provide you that kind of seamless care experience that you would expect.
Neat, great. And so one other thing that you highlighted in your outline is you talked about collaboration and scale. And could you just talk about the role of collaboration and scale a little bit?
Sure. I guess the collaboration and scale that I call out, I learned a lot about collaboration and scale from actually the current governor. So Doug has been a fantastic leader in terms of building out businesses and building out collaboration and scale via partner ecosystems. And so back in the day when Doug was leading Great Plains, he was able to bring together some of the very best companies in terms of financials and accounting to be able to represent the Great Plains product line. And it's one of the true strengths that Great Plains actually brought to Microsoft was the partners that came along with the entire solution. And those partners, again, built on top of the platform, integrated their solutions, and then provided all of their expertise to deploy those solutions across the globe. As the result of those partners and all of their industry-specific solutions, at the time where I was working and leading the Dynamics partner channel, we were able to take the business from 300 million to $1 billion. And so just a huge value add. And that value add was really driven by all those unique solutions and the scale and reach that those partners enabled us. And so part of that is based in technology and just the fact that we had a great platform. We had great leadership who were able to guide us in that direction. The other part of this is just the kind of culture that was behind that. It was a culture of investing for the long term. It was a culture of vision, and it was a culture of trust and making sure that there was a trusted, long-standing business relationship at the center of this technology-based interaction that provided a financial solution for our customers. And so when you mix all of those things together, as we've talked about digital transformation, it's really all of those concepts woven together to be able to drive that kind of an outcome.
Oh, great, thank you.
Thinking about, Steve, thinking about your international experiences, I know you've lived and worked in all these many places across the US, and in Asia, Europe. You've lived in, I think, Munich, Germany. You've been in Singapore, all these many places. So I think about cultural differences that you must have experienced a great deal. And I'm just wondering what you might say about the way learning opportunities tie in with cultural differences, the kinds of things you've learned from your living and working in all these many different places internationally, well, and across the US as well.
Appreciate the question, Ken. And actually, it's one of the areas within my own personal experience, professional experience, that I just take great pleasure in talking about, because it's just such an epic experience to be able to have the opportunity to have lived and worked in all these places with all these various people and cultures. And so, as examples of some of the differences that you see across the globe, one of the things I'd always encourage all the students that are in the audience, when you get a start on your career, find an opportunity that forces you to live somewhere else in the world and experience another culture. I got the chance to lead our Europe, Middle East, and Africa team, as well as our Asia team for Microsoft for a period of about 8 years total. And a great example of the differences. So healthcare is a great example in Europe. So if I take the Netherlands and Germany, so the Netherlands, if I'm in the Netherlands, because of GDPR and all the security and privacy laws that are in effect and policies across the European Union, I can share my patient data and I can store it in a cloud location over in Germany. And folks from the Netherlands would think nothing of that, because in Germany, privacy and security is so strict that in many cases, my data actually has to live within the same county as opposed to within the same country. So it's super strict regulations within Germany and how tight the management of personal health information is within the country of Germany. And so if I'm from the Netherlands, I would say, no problem. You've got a data center in Germany. You can store it there. That's fine by me. However, if I live in Germany, I don't feel the same way about the Netherlands because the privacy and health information security is quite a bit different and much more flexible than in my local German county in which I might reside. And so just simple examples of that in terms of data sharing, data storage, security, and privacy. Even though by law, you can share that information across, there's a perception that still exists because of pre-existing data sharing and storing agreements. That's a European example. If I flip the example to Asia, I'd tell you that the most interesting place that I've been is Japan from a business culture perspective. And I say that because of the complexities that are involved in doing business in Japan. Sitting at the right seat of the table to make sure that you're respecting those in a position of authority and power, and then seated in sequence in terms of your speaking order and influence on the discussion. Going to dinner and knowing that you need to pour the drink of your neighbor so that he or her or his glass is always full and never empty. The ability to make sure that when you're departing that you're bowing lower than your host to show gratitude and respect. And so all of those simple personal touches to ensure that you're conducting and communicating the right message and showing the right empathy and respect for the culture is just, it's both super interesting and super important as you engage and try to do business across the globe. So those are small learnings that I've been able to have throughout the years and many more across many other cultures, but it certainly is fascinating to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing those. I mean, the thing that came to my mind is empathy right before you said that, actually, because I'm thinking about just even trying to navigate the subway when you don't understand the language, you can't read the language. It gives you empathy for people that are here in the United States and are new and don't understand the language. It's like, it gives you a little bit of a feeling of what they're going through and, wanting to be helpful. So we have an audience, and we want to make sure we give some time for questions from the audience, but I'll read one of the questions that came from our online audience first. And I invite anybody in the audience here just to come up to the podium, and then we'll call on you when after the first question here. So first question from our online audience says, can you please share your thoughts or past experiences on digital inception in the manufacturing field?
By digital inception.
I think they mean digital transformation is my guess.
Sure.
Well, I don't know for sure, but I'm reading it as it is. It says digital inception on here.
So there's actually one of the companies that I worked with in Europe. They started out with basically a service model where they were providing parts to the manufacturing industry. And so as part of their part production methodology, they started to take that online and started to digitize their parts delivery process. What they found is that they became so good at the supply chain that they started interfacing directly with the manufacturing line and being able to predict the use of parts and the inventory of those parts just simply by integrating directly at that manufacturing line level. They continued on that journey of digital transformation and took it one step farther and actually said, okay, well, now that we've completely integrated along the manufacturing line, what aspects of manufacturing can we directly actually provide as a service? So what kind of robotic processes, what kind of people and expertise can be applied? And so they actually started providing manufacturing as a service. As a result, that particular company right now has over 17,000 suppliers. I don't know how many millions of parts that they supply, but literally from across all of Europe and the Middle East. And they, in many cases, for many of the auto manufacturers across Europe, they manage the entire manufacturing process through from supply chain all the way through to finished product. And so a fantastic digital transformation that took place over about 5 to 10 years. But just amazing pace of change and transformation that we saw with that company.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's an incredible increase in productivity and performance as a result of that. That's great. So we have Patrick McCloskey would like to ask a question at the podium here. So you can't see him, but that's who it is talking right now.
Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Steve. Thanks so much for enlightening us this afternoon. I just wanted to ask about if you could talk a little more about opportunity. A lot of people, I think, are afraid that digitization, AI, machine learning, automation is going to eliminate a lot of jobs. And but you seem to be really showing how these tools are going to actually help us create a lot of jobs, a lot of new opportunities. There's no shortage of problems to solve. So boring jobs might go away, but there's going to be more and more interesting jobs as people, if people keep up with the digitization.
Yep, I would agree with the comment. And what you'll see is that, and that's really the challenge, is to look at technology and look at digital transformation as an opportunity, and exactly what it is. It's a transformation. And part of that transformation is the disruption of things in their current state. And so gone are the days where you can typically go and punch a clock from 9 to 5 and do exactly the same thing every day, day in, day out for decades on end. There's just far too much change in the economy and in technology and business process for that to happen. And so, even think of it from a delivery person's perspective. I'm not delivering through the US Post anymore. I'm delivering through an Amazon Prime van that is a contracted carrier. And so there's just so many fundamental changes within the economy. And as long as people keep an open mind and really adopt change, and that's what's challenging, it's really that change-oriented mindset. And as long as you can adopt that, then you can typically stay out ahead of the technology and look for the next possibility or frontier of opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the oldest worries in the world. People always are constantly worrying that technological change is going to take away jobs, and it never happens. It's just jobs change. I mean, specific types of jobs maybe go away, but jobs change. Yeah. So we have David Hong. We have an accounting professor. He's also a faculty fellow in the Chale Institute. So I hope it's a good question, David.
Hi, David.
Hi, Steve. Okay, I'm David. I have several questions. Okay, first of all, one question is related to accounting. I'm an accounting professor. We know cryptocurrencies is widely used in the world, but I talked to lots of auditing firms about this cryptocurrency because it's really hard for them to understand this cryptocurrency, this new technology, how to evaluate, how to report this one, how to do auditing. I talked to a number of auditors. They say it's not auditable for them. They were afraid of this technology change. Yeah, we know there's this is something. This is the future. Okay, but how can I convince them they should invest now to better understand this? Help them get this knowledge. I just see it seems so hard for accounting because we do accounting. We're not so technology oriented. It seems is maybe why in the old age. I don't know how to convince them. Do you have any suggestions to me? A suggestion to the auditors in the accounting jobs? This is really a big challenge to our professional. No, so I want to get your suggestions. A second question is, just now you mentioned something about this immersive app performance management system. Okay, could you give us some examples? I ask that because my son, he really loves coding, these kind of programming things. Your example is pretty fascinating. I would suggest maybe at NDSU, we might need to adopt this kind of thing in our computer science programs, let our students better prepared for the future, how to do programming. But I'm really concerned what's the challenge for our students if we adopt this one. So basically 2 questions.
Okay.
Two
Thanks,
large
David.
questions. Okay.
So crypto is a challenge everywhere. And my comments on crypto in terms of just adoption by the accounting community, financial community in general is, I don't think it's an accountant issue. I think it's a policy issue. And so the challenge with crypto is that there is no adopted legal policies and accounting policies that really dictate the way that we will consistently manage, monitor, and value cryptocurrency. And so what you see is very rapid fluctuation in crypto because it's not tied to some of the more constant basis of a currency, whether it would be the GDP of a country, whether it would be a gold standard, or some other measure of wealth. And so until we can get those standards, measures of wealth and value applied to crypto, I think the more mature it becomes, the more apt it is to actually lend itself to policy, and then as a result of policy to value. And that's really what the accounting and financial field is looking for, is that degree of certainty. At the end of the day, crypto or a dollar bill doesn't matter. It's all based on trust and risk. And so if there's some degree of varying trust or risk, then crypto will always be more volatile, and it will be circumspect in terms of its valuation in a financial situation. And so in terms of being able to address that, I would say it'd be to start to establish some kind of a baseline valuation for crypto using existing measures of wealth and value. On the second question, and so I'll switch topic because they're very different topics. On the immersive question, Immersive Apm. So I'm very biased, obviously, because I work with the company and help have input to some of the designs and directions of the company. And so it's really fun to see that solution take off. There are a number of customers, manufacturing customers, some healthcare customers, some software and identity and access management customers that are using the platform today. In terms of usage and application for the student population, there's actually, if you go to that website, there is a free forever trial. So whether you're a teacher or a student, you can actually download all of Immersive Apm. All you have to do is take 10 lines of code and insert it into your standard program. And if you insert that, recompile your program, your application becomes completely enabled in terms of immersive APM and all of the capabilities to monitor, manage, and experience your software architecture. And so that ability to expose just a standard application to that metaverse APM environment is directly available to you, and it's free of charge, actually. That's very intentional. So we have a free forever trial, and please download it and play with it. We'd love to have your feedback and comments, and always looking to improve upon that experience.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
A question that came in from one of the Zoom audience participants. This is back to the idea of privacy and privacy laws. I know you touched on that a little bit earlier, but the balance that we can think about in terms of business opportunities and practices and privacy laws in particular. What would you say in your experience would be the better countries that strike a good balance in terms of the privacy laws that they do have? I know you talked about the Netherlands and Germany a bit.
Yep.
And the differences there, but the question is really what's the best balance and in terms of privacy laws?
Yeah, privacy from my perspective is best enforced at an individual level rather than a group level. And so I would say that those countries that are advancing toward individual consent of my data and the ability to actually track and manage that would be the countries in which I would instill the most trust. And so countries like Germany is very strict with PHI information.
For 30 years.
Singapore as well.
Yeah.
And so Singapore very, very tight-lipped about security. And they actually,
Say that was
Singapore has actually adopted a very strict security policy because they actually had an intrusion 3 to 5 years ago. And now they've just locked down all personal health information as well as personal financial information. And so they've done a very nice job just within the last few years of really increasing their security profile. Japan would be on that same par. And so I would say most of the Western developed nations have strong security policies in place, can continue to get better. And the way that they continue to get better is actually through technology. It's by having very tight controls on an individual basis so that I can say, here's exactly who and why I want my information shared. And the more that we can work towards that with new adaptations in technology, the better off we are.
Okay, sorry about that. We don't have the controls up here. So
Yeah.
But anyway, so we have a Challey Institute scholar, Zahid Anwar. And so I've learned a little bit about cybersecurity and privacy from Zahid. I was talking about my opportunities to hang around with smart and creative people, and Zahid is one of them. So Zahid has a question for you.
Hi, Zahid.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for all those amazing examples of digital transformations. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, we've already discussed and you've talked about it, the cybersecurity implications. You were mentioning, cancer research in healthcare, and I'm just wondering, are there any cases that you've seen where an employer finds out about, your genetic diseases in advance? Or we talked about, Ken talked about finding long lost relatives using genomics. So what if, one day someone comes to knocking on your door, hey, you're my dad, or some, and so there's, and then you talked about the metaverse. So when I teach computer science nowadays, we teach our students, used to teach them comment your code, but now we tell them, well, maybe in your final development, the production version, take the comments out because those might help a hacker. But then you talked about how we have all these tools that let you go in and look at all this code, processes and details of things. Have you seen examples of these occurrences, malicious occurrences in your works, or am I being just too paranoid? And if you have seen these, then what are some of the things that we could look out for and sort of incorporate into our design practices as we go forward with the digital transformation? Thank you.
Yep. Very good question, Zahid. So I've not seen any hacking at a genetic level yet. No one has shown up on my doorstep, and so that's good to know. But what I have seen and I have experience with is health systems that have had hacker and or PHI shared data. And that's a really serious issue. The health systems do an amazing job of securing and trying to maintain that data and take it far more seriously if there's some kind of an incident. Great example is, many years back, I worked with some of the health systems in Southern California where there happened to be a few movie stars and rock stars hanging out. And there's actually special controls in many of the hospitals in that geography to make sure that for those special individuals that Brad Pitt's medical record doesn't go floating around somewhere and is available for anybody to see. And so those kinds of strict controls are already in place in the places where they need to be. As I talked about in my response to the previous question, and this is actually one of the things that we're working on at AWS, is how do you take the control of my personal information, especially when you get down to the level of detail of genomics, and how do I ensure that I only share that with who I want to, when I want to, and that I can actually retract that ability to share that information at any time. And so that patient consent-driven collaboration on data, whether it's financial, whether it's healthcare related, we really need to take that next step to go to that level. You'll see examples of that actually with many of the applications that are now available on your iPhone. And so Apple's done some really nice work in advanced technologies in that direction. And what I think you'll see is more of the same. I know for sure you'll see that from AWS, and just knowing and working with many of the folks at Microsoft for many years, I'm sure you'll see the same. And so I think we're all set in the same direction. It's just a matter of continually refining to get to that endpoint of personally controlled and secure information.
We have one final question from the online audience, and then we'll wrap it up with this last question. I think this is a good question to end on. So it's a follow-up to Patrick's question. So they're asking, what suggestions do you have to improve and increase learning among Americans so that people can pursue and complete the education and training needed to meet the demands of the new jobs that will exist in the future? And I guess I'll expand it to just say, we're speaking to a university audience. So do you have suggestions for students on how they can be flexible so that, nobody's going to be able to predict what the new jobs are in the future. There's going to be some new technology. So what's the best way that we can just maintain lifelong learning, I guess, and just to be flexible to make sure that we can adapt to change so that we can continue to be productive?
Great question. And it's actually a question that I've been continually asking through my life, through my career. And one of the things that and you'll actually see this in my career history, is about every 3 to 5 years, I'm constantly asking the question of what's next. Because as part of what we've been talking about, as part of digital transformation, you have to have career transformation, professional transformation along with that. And so you always need to be looking at what is this intersection of technologies, business, and all of the different companies and cultures that you could interact with, and where might you be able to apply your skills and learn something new to advance your own experience and understanding. And so that'd be my first point of advice, would be constantly ask what is next, and make sure that you're open to actually answering that question and looking for those opportunities. That's why I looked for opportunities on a worldwide stage, and being able to live and work both in Europe and in Asia, is that what's next. Part of that is a cultural experience, and being able to understand, work with, and appreciate the cultures of the entire world. And so the ability to be a citizen of the world versus a citizen of the United States, there's a difference. And you'll feel that difference when you go through that learning experience. The other thing that I would do is just constant learning, and not just in your field, in your dedicated field of expertise, but looking at things like the business process modeling that I talked about. You know, that was a completely different domain, but certainly of high value in terms of future work efforts. I never went to medical school, but I've spent a ton of time developing and then actually deploying medical systems. And that's been super valuable, both to the providers and their patients, as well as in terms of professional development for myself. And so the ability to constantly look at those new areas of interest and development for you, and be able to then consume that information and then make that part of your own journey through your career.
Yeah, it's a great example, and I love just the idea of taking this medical technology and then the information technology, essentially blending components of them and artificial intelligence, and coming up with a way better solution. So I mean, that's really cool. A good example of the stuff you've done, I think, is a great example of being adaptive and looking for new opportunities. Yeah.
And one of the things I tell you to do is, actually, this is kind of the byline that I have on LinkedIn. So if you want to talk further about this, or if you'd ever want to connect, I'm the same bald guy on LinkedIn that I am on camera here. And so I'm just Stephen Malme on LinkedIn. And my byline on LinkedIn is a lifetime of listening, learning, and leading. And I list those in that order very purposefully, because it really is more about listening and learning than it is leading. And I spend so much more time listening and reading and learning. And then as a result, sooner or later, I get around to leading. But that value is really condensed within the learning experience.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. So just a little bit by way of conclusion and wrap up. First of all, thank you so very much, Steve. It's been great to connect with you again in this virtual space. That's working fantastic. Greatly appreciated. Thanks to those participating today, either in the room or coming in by Zoom. Thank you for your attention. I think the things we've discussed today that have to do with the importance of technological awareness and how technology and the momentum of technological change results in opportunities in the business world and in all walks of life. It's a great topic, and we've really explored it today and have great insight into that. So thank you again to Steve Malme, and it's been a great session today.
Yeah,
thanks to all.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And thanks, Steve. You just said you learn more by listening. And so I've learned a lot from you today. I know me for one, I'm sure everyone else has too. So thank you.
Appreciate the discussion,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
everyone.
Great to see you.
Yep,
Take
see ya.
care.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks.